Okay, so welcome to my new studio. Well, for the next couple of days, I'm here at the Residence Inn. I'm shooting a little travel job here, shooting some interviews, stories, all sorts of stuff. And so I wanted to show you real quick my 2-camera setup. A camera, of course, my C200, which I use as the A camera. I'm gonna use that for all my B-roll and everything, shooting in 4K, shooting in C-Log, rock solid. And my B camera though is the good old C100 Mark I, not even the Mark II. This thing has seen better days. Like the screen doesn't even work anymore. It's kind of on its last legs, but it works. And the reason that I picked the C100 Mark I as my B camera instead of going out and getting another C200 or using my A7S Mark II or buying like a 5D or something, one, I really like to match camera brands, of course, because of color science. This has C-Log. It's a little bit different, but the color science just is generally in the same playing field when I go into post and do color correction. 2 is sensor size. I like to match the sensor size if I can between 2 cameras. There's just something about matching an APS-C and a full frame sensor or micro four thirds and a full frame sensor. There's just something that doesn't quite work right. Even if you calculate for depth of field and you calculate for the exposure differences and all that kind of stuff, it just doesn't feel the same. And so I like starting from the same sensor size standpoint. That's super, super convenient for me in post. And I also just love that the C100 Mark I, yes, the screen's a little beat up, but this thing is just a workhorse. You just set it and it rolls forever. No problem. I mean, it's risky. I only brought 1 battery for it. Don't recommend that, but I know that this will last for the interview, even if the interview goes on for 4 hours, which it won't. We don't even have enough time for a 4-hour interview. But I know that on 1 battery, this thing will last and will get the job done. So that's why I've got this one. So this one's gonna be rolling in 1080p, 24 frames per second, and then I'm gonna have the C200 is going to be my wide angle, shooting in 4K, and that gives me room to punch in, punch out, make 2 angles out of that 4K image if I need it. For whatever reason, let's say that I screw up when I'm operating the B camera and it's a little bit out of focus on a certain important beat that I want to hit. I've got 4K on there, so we're good. We've got a backup there. I'm using the C100 as the close-up camera, as the B camera, just because I don't have the resolution to crop around all that kind of stuff, and so I'm just gonna go ahead and give myself a close-up angle with that. The C200 I've got it set up for the shoulder rig because when I shoot all my B-roll, it's gonna be handheld on the shoulder rig, that kind of stuff, but for the interview, it's gonna be sitting on the tripod, just chilling, doing its thing. And then I've got this little carbon fiber Manfrotto tripod. That's a weight balance, right? Is that I would love to have 2 big heavy duty tripods, but I just didn't have the weight for it. Actually, my bag was, embarrassingly enough, my bag was 2 pounds overweight for this trip. Not great. So definitely could not have fit a second full-size tripod. So I've got the little one. If I could, I would swap the C200 onto the mini tripod since it wouldn't have to move, but the C200 fully kitted out like this is gonna be way over the weight capacity. I think this little head is only good for a couple of pounds, and I wouldn't trust it to hold the C200 and not shake or anything when the floor moves, as opposed to the big tripod. I could take all the stuff off the C200, but I know that I'm gonna be going right from the interview, I'm gonna be pulling it off the tripod, and we're gonna be shooting B-roll all over the place. That kind of stuff is gonna happen, and so I need to be ready to go, and it needs to be kitted up. As far as audio goes, I'm just gonna use the internal mics as backup on the C100. That's gonna be syncing sound. The Rode NGG3 on there for scratch audio, and then I've also got my wireless transmitter, my Sennheiser G3 wireless pack, and then, I think we're gonna do some 2-person interviews, I don't know. I've got this little Tascam DR10L in my pocket. Yeah, so all this stuff packed into my Pelican case, my Pelican 1510 case, which you've seen me pack before, and then everything else is packed into my suitcase, which goes below the plane, in all the camera parts that had to go below the plane. I don't normally do that, but again, the C100 is just a tank, and so I let it go under the plane. And so I've got a little padded foam divider that has a thing that pulls over the top to keep your camera safe. Last thing I'll talk about here is lenses, 24 to 105. Go to Doc zoom lens, 24 to 70. My go-to zoom lens, that'll probably be for the B camera on the interviews. And then I've got the good old 35 f2.IS. That's probably gonna be the wider of the 2, the A angle for the interviews. And then if I need to strip down at any point, if you strip the rig down, I know that we're shooting in, we're shooting in a restaurant, and sometimes they can be a little bit like, hey, you look like a big production, we don't want that in here. And so I will avoid that whole conversation, and I will just make it work with a smaller rig and put a smaller lens on the C200. So last thing, my monitors of choice, of course, the Small HD 702 Bright. That is going to be on the C200 when I'm shooting B-roll, but it's probably actually going to be on the C100 for the interviews so that I can really get that critical focus on the B camera. And then I've got, hanging out here on the C200 is the Small HD Focus 5-inch for the interview, and maybe for some of the shoulder work, if I'm really going to be doing like a whole interview on the shoulder, I do that just because a little bit less weight and I never have to worry about it getting in my shot like the 702. But anyway, that's real quick. That's a hotel room setup. That's travel to camera interview setup. Thanks for watching. See you soon.
All right, Drew, do your magic.